Thank you for joining us again here at Autistic Radio. It means a lot, and it means a lot that we're sponsored by coldpack.co.uk. If you need a cryotherapy solution for your practice, using coldpack.co.uk donates the money that keeps the lights on here at Autistic Radio. And the microphone's working. Harry, is your microphone working? Take it away, mate.
Hello everyone, thanks Jules. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 15th of March 2026, which is also Mother's Day in the UK. And this is where we share the Facebook posts on the autisticradio.com page. And the first post, as it has been for the past while, is a poem, which was just shared. And it says the following. The poem is anonymous. I'm not a public sharer of poetry, and to be honest, most of my poems don't share well when read aloud. They are usually small and visual, compressed and minimalist, to be pondered silently, to turn this way and that. But I think this one might work when read aloud. I wrote it just now from another one I wrote 19 years ago in December. It takes place on the evening of June the 21st when we were all children. And the poem's called In the Late June Night. Wait, like a child, for the game to be finished, for Mum to call the street lights are on. At the end of the game, when the last person has been touched, all the children, having stopped their initial composing with the touching of someone, shall begin again their effusions, singing faster and faster, till they meet in the middle of the field, join hands, raise them up together, steeple-like, and shout, the streetlights are on. What's people's thoughts?
But also I like it's aligned to the right, so it's something a bit different.
So your sound, Gia, can't really hear you.
The way that it's aligned on the right hand side, on the left.
They call that right justified, don't they? It's really nice how the title even slips further over to the right, getting a nice kind of visual sense from it.
I relate to the feeling of that. I think we might remember those times where the season's changing and you have that sort of sense of nostalgia, even as a kid, in that sense, that knowledge, that thing that you've done all the summer or whatever, that being out and around and the same games, the same routines, the same kick up against the wall, and the season's changed, and there's that feeling of nostalgia about that change in it. And I think the way the poet, in the first part of that, the way the poet manages to say that with really simple words, words that are just placed like bricks for you to build the idea out of, I like that. An autistic sense of things to me. That's where the Wes Anderson comes in on the director of films and cinema. It's the puzzle in it.
What I like about it is the words, even the title, In the June Night. The title, the words about the streetlights, for instance, kind of gives a nostalgic feel. Being out as a child, and when the streetlights go on, it's like it's time to go home, or it's time, it's a certain time where it's going to get dark. And I always kind of have those kind of memories of when I'm out somewhere, maybe not playing a game as such, but being somewhere, and it was just like, oh, this is the time, and it's like it was like before the mobile phone, and it was like that was a sort of sign to, well, it's had a watch, of course, but it's just basically what I'm saying. It's giving these pictures, these memories, as well as you read through it, as I do as I read stories as well. It's like it creates a picture of something it's describing. I'm always fascinated how that happens, especially when you're reading something for the first time, and even when you're reading it aloud as well. It's just these pictures come in your head, and generally they're beautiful pictures, and it's basically painting a picture.
It's a nice sense at the end of the kids getting together, physically creating that steeple and putting that up to shout out that the street lights are on, a kind of defiance, um, that they can play on. Um, I wonder if that's what it's about, being called in when the street lights are on. So there's no need to be called in now. We can continue our games. We can, it can go on.
And that there's just the joy of that game. There's no jobs and money. There's none of those issues are in there. There's just and enjoying the game.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
that
agree. It
picture.
captures a moment. Um, a memory of when things weren't as serious as they would later become, you get into adulthood, etc. It does create that sort of memory for me. Apologies if I interrupted someone. I felt I interrupted someone there.
It's it's putting a time here, really, isn't it? Because it's street lights and it's a group of kids outside playing while mum's inside. Um, that's not something that happens in most communities in the north. Um, I recognise being outside and being called in and being a part of a sort of neighbourhood gang on the estate, but I'm not sure whether that happens so much nowadays.
I think the adult monitoring ends at a certain age, doesn't it? The sort of grown up adolescent, who no longer plays street games. This has got a sense of the younger breed, who are still being kind of monitored or self monitoring even because they're aware of mum. But I take it it's late June light. This always makes me think school holidays, that kind of freedom. But you could be playing in the street at any time.
Do you remember that sense of that group of kids outside, and there would be kids all the way from maybe a 2 or 3 year old, even sometimes toddling along on uh, in so being looked after by a, I don't know, a 9 year old or a 10 year old, but a whole range of kids would be outside, really young, and kind of ferally organising themselves with very little parental oversight, as far as I can remember from my childhood.
It was like the beginning of social cohesion, like a sense of community that you develop for yourself. Um, yeah, there was a time when kids were deliberately put outside because it gave the adults space or time or room for their own things or to do certain things. Um, and of course, it kept you in a place where they knew where you were and you were amused and you were with others. Um, yeah, it's kind of gone now. I don't see a lot of it where I live, and I'm still in the same place where I played as a child.
In the poem, there's no oversight of from any parent except that reference to waiting for mom to call. Mom doesn't call during this poem. You know, the kids have gone through a game. It's come to the end of the game. And then they're making this pyramid, and it's all community up. Everything is kid led. You know, that's what it takes me back to. Um, a different a different era.
It's odd when the steeple is mentioned, I begin to get a wee bit of a chill. You know, I got this kind of like, oh, kids playing, they're up to something sinister, you know, and I thought we were going to take a dark tinge at the end there. But no, I think they're just playing tag, aren't they?
Well, I think they're kind of celebrating and sort of throwing their hands up in the air, steeple like, and it looks as though it's a celebration of, you know, uplifting, um, elemental. If you add steeple in it, it's building something tall, but it's also a religiosity about it. So it's something sacred in the joyfulness of the kids throwing up their arms in the air, I reckon.
Yeah, steeple's like the only unusual word in there. You know, the only word that is kind of symbolic to a certain extent.
I sort of noticed shall begin again. Like if you go in the middle at the end of at the end and shall begin again might be.
Mm, the old resurrection idea. It could be that. I mean, it looks quite strongly that now you point it out.
My favorite thing is that it will mean something different uh, to a person every time they read it, and then also something different to every reader.
That is very true. I mean, when I was reading it and I was talking about the pictures coming through, and I was thinking about somewhere in a field. I think it says it in the poem, like somewhere not far, but a big field which is out the way a little bit. But then when the conversation started about, you know, kids play and, you know, smaller children join in, they've been looked after by the big brother or big sister, whatever, actually reminds me of me being out playing in a housing estate, you know, not far from the house. Um, and gone up to all kinds of adventures and not being that far from the house. I mean, if you were, I mean, the thing about feeling far from the house is actually going to the other end of the street. It was a long street that I lived in. And as you say, it's just all these different interpretations you can take from words that are brought together. And that's what I love about poetry.
You know, when you said all the different ages of children looking after each other, I remember this sense that part of the reason you'd be looking after them is so that you could stay out longer. My next door neighbors, when I was growing up, were four boys and they would play rough. And their mother would have them take their young brother out. And as soon as somebody hurt him by mistake, like with a ball or whatever, you could hear them all like rally around the kid and say, "You're all right. You're all right. Be a man," which maybe is a bit problematic, but
Oh, that's the horror of the social childhood, of having to be a part of the group when you don't want to be.
Yeah, I can remember being younger, but around a group of friends rather than, um, family. And I remember that it was football, it was penalties or something. And this is how long ago it was. I couldn't kick the ball right, or I kept kicking it over the wall. I could hardly miss it, but I kept kicking it or slipping over. And I can remember saying to an adult that because I was crying, I was getting laughed at. And somebody says to me, "Well, Gaza was crying at the World Cup." Well, that's how long ago it was. So yeah, so just a wee memory that came up there. But the other thing is it also reminds me of my wee brother. Um, Out with my wee sister, and they were playing football. And we talk about every now and again we were meeting up that used to play football, and my wee brother used to always cry because he made a mistake. And it's like, oh, come on, stop it. It's a tough game. Football, soccer, it's a tough game. So not man up. Maybe they did say man up. I wasn't there, but it's interesting to hear those kind of stories. And my wee brother did hang about with my wee sister a good bit, and they've got a 2 or 3 year in between them. So that kind of connects with the ones where the younger kind of person goes with the older and they're looked after while they're playing games, etc. It's just all these nice memories all coming up from this conversation, which I'm really enjoying.
I think looking at the poem, I went straight to the images of the children playing and the street light and mum, and I ignored the actual start there where it said like children. So we're referring to, it says wait like a child for the game to be finished, for mum to call the street lights are on, or for mum to call and then the street lights are on. At the end of the game, when the last person has been touched, all the children having stopped their initial composing with the touching of someone shall begin again their effusions, singing faster, faster. It has a feeling that we're comparing the game of children playing outside and the expectation of mum to come and call them in to the kind of whole of life, the whole cycle of life somehow.
I think you can do that in the last part too if you stop before the street lights are on. What you just said reminded me of this funny, I don't know if they played this ad, but you can always Google it. It might have been, you know how they make really expensive, cool ads for the American Super Bowl? Maybe they do for the World Cup. It was just for Taco Bell. And it was all of these senior citizens being tucked into bed at a nursing home. And then soon as the lights were out, they'd open one eye and then pull down the covers and get out of bed. And they were all dressed up for a night out. And they all met, and there was this old sports car. And they went and they did so many crazy things. And they went clubbing and to the beach and then to Taco Bell and then snuck back in the morning.
It's the field of dreams. If we build it, they will come.
Do you remember the Twilight Zone episode called Kick the Can, where there was a load of old people in a home and one of them decides that they should go out and play this game like they did when they were children called Kick the Can. So they go out and play this game and they all become children again. And then it gets late and they know if they go back into the old people's home, they're going to be old again. And so most of them decide to go back in, and one guy just decides that he wants to be a child again and wanders off.
They did an experiment where they took a group of people from assisted living and they changed their environment to be very, very similar to the age that they were teenagers in. So maybe going back to the 1940s or the 1950s. So they changed everything, the music, the atmosphere. And what they found was that people living in this new environment that had been created for them, like a stage set, started to perk up and behave in more active ways, spend more time walking around, socializing, talking to each other, dancing with each other, getting up and being, and it changed all the parameters that they could measure as scientists about people's well-being, changed for this group of people.
The next post is from Neurospicy Poems. And before the poem is read, what they say is anyone else sensitive to mess and yet so bad at fixing it? And the poem is called Friction. Highly sensitive to disorder, but inconsistent at sustaining order. I notice everything out of place, every speck of dirt, every job waiting, but I can never do every single thing. So I live stuck between awareness and capacity in the constant hum of friction. What's your thoughts?
It's Schrodinger's cleaning. It's neither done nor not done.
It reminds me of how I feel in my house. Not just about cleaning, but things that need to be done, like decorating or upgrading. Maybe upgrading's a high thing. Basically changing. Something I feel it needs to be changed for the house to look a bit better. But I feel like this sort of is thinking, how big is this going to be? What's going to be the inconvenience? All the kind of negative things come in. Even when I think about cleaning, going back to that and putting things in order, it's like, where do you start? And because it's a big job, it's like, I don't like leaving things half finished, but you can't do everything all at once. So I'm thinking, maybe try like one room at a time. But there always seems to be this underlining thought that's like negative. And although I do overcome these every now and again, I don't do it regular enough. It's like, I don't want to disturb anything in my house, even for a moment, to clean. I do clean, and it's clean. It's not dead dirty, but it could be more cleaner, and it could be, in my head, more nicer. But I just feel that this whole thing, what this poem's talking about, is just too, I don't know, it's just uncomfortable.
I especially resonate with the image. It looks like a desk, an office. And when mine will get that way. And I do feel better when I file everything. But I tend to only do it once a week. Even at the end of a busy day, it could look like that.
Wasn't it you and GR just last week were talking to me about dust and how you don't like, you try very hard not to disturb the dust?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was Quentin Crisp said, someone said it's very dusty in his apartment. And he said, well, after 4 years, it doesn't get any thicker or any thinner.
I was dusting today, in fact, this afternoon, because I could pick it up with my fingers. It was just like so thick. And that's just after a week or two. So I live by a main road. I think it may be partly that, but and I like my windows open. But if you have a lot of things, there's a lot of things for dust to land on, and that may be the issue. So I thought, how can I get minimal? Then I thought, would I really like laminate flooring? No, because it would just get layers of dust on it that I wouldn't quite. I'd have to mop it all the time. But then what are carpets like? You know? And I thought, oh well, why don't you just pay someone to bloody clean it all, or go away somewhere and have your house renovated? But if you can afford it, that is. And then the disturbance that that might create of all your precious things, which aren't so precious now, because I've got this experiment, which is like, get everything that I think is valuable to me and get carted off to some storage unit and see how quickly I try and get it all back.
Robbie in the text says, the flat has always been untidy since I moved. There is too much to be done, it is too overwhelming. And he also says, it is not knowing where things are that causes me distress.
All the things that I really care about and hold dear remain in one place. I don't move them. They do have dust around them on whatever shelf they're on. But since I don't move them, the dust is not disturbed. But in main places, I do, because I'm clean. I'm just prone to collecting dust for those things that I value and won't move. That's kind of me. But this poem really made me think of how my desk feels. And my desk once a week will not have dust because I will move those things like that are in this image. And I do have that feeling that that person's describing. Like where I just put one project on top of the next and I focus on each one until that pile gets there. And there's a huge feeling of friction. But I can't put it back unless there's a point in time, like a Sunday night, where I switch. And it's hard. I don't want to do it, but I do it.
I used to think it was like nesting. You know, you surround your bed with about 40 books that you dip into every now and then, if you dip into them at all. But really, they're just building skyscrapers of books around you. I remember CDs doing that. I used to save things onto CDs and DVDs, and eventually I had thousands of them. And it was like moving around them like they were a city of discs. They're all in a cupboard now that haven't opened for 3 years.
When I worked at the Globe and Mail, I kept such extensive files that I was given more filing room. And then when it was full, I said to my manager, I'm going to have to, get rid of some of the files. They got me this place in this other storage place where my stuff went onto a pallet and a little fence was put around it. They said, you might find these valuable in the future.
Yeah, the all important paper trail. That when I got my diagnosis and went online looking for, fellow travellers, I was amazed at how really sensitive autistic people were to storage systems and filing. Like on computers, like they were always trying to seek the best and most perfect way of doing their, folder filing on their computers and gizmos.
The inside
Yeah,
of my house is a city of towers of CDs, DVDs, books, magazines. That's just the way it is.
the lucky thing for me is having started my working life in a library. Um, I'm less prone to towers of CDs and books. And I allow myself 8 books in a stack, but otherwise my bookshelves are quite big and they are organized the way they would be at a library, like poetry in order of author, all the different subjects. But then I, for my computer, Ray, what you were saying, yeah, I use the same naming conventions that a library might use. And so when I look for something, it will all come in the right order. I never have to get rid of anything in there.
Where I used to live, it wasn't tidy, but I knew where everything was. But when I was forced to move, I had no control over the move. So things have got scattered between storage areas, shed, and my flat. I just don't know where things are, and there's too many new places to remember.
And that would be like this poem. It would be as distressing as this poem on a grander scale.
I always think about this idea of how we can be different people through our lives. We change into sometimes entirely different people, um, and sometimes I even intentionally try to do that by giving things up and giving things away and moving. Well, when I was younger, I'm a wee bit more sedentary now and settled, but I can imagine the trauma of any kind of move, wondering where the things that connected you to reality, where are they now? Um, but sometimes we turn into different people, or that new person we are becoming is just waiting around the corner.
The next post is from the NDCAND specialists, who are educational consultant helping families and educators overcome challenges presented by neurodivergence, providing advocacy, advice and support services for families and educators based in the UK. And it's a post about Happy Mother's Day. To all the mothers, the ones who wished but couldn't, the ones who adopted or fostered, the ones who tried and tried and tried and got there in the end, the ones with rainbow babies, the ones with different or disabled babies who may or may not still be babies, the ones who fled from war-torn countries to keep their babies safe, the ones who've survived abuse, violence, persecution, discrimination, grief, loss, anxiety, and more. This is for you, sending you love on Mother's Day. What's people's thoughts?
I wasn't fully aware that it was even Mother's Day. You know, this can happen in life. You become so detached from certain social conventions that you forget they exist. But I was reflecting today, I think, or recently, about my dog, who's gone now. But this idea of like how a woman I admire was describing when she became a mother late in life. And what she was saying resonated with me in the way that I felt about my dog. And I thought, is this a bad comparison I'm making? Because it was all about unconditional love. This idea of, being in a situation that you can't really even plan. You can, but you won't. It's one of these events, things in life that takes you into the moment. Kind, I would assume, not having been a mother or parent, but I've been a dog owner, and I thought, have I got a resonance there?
I would say you do. And in Canada, we don't use owner anymore because legally we're their guardian because they're a sentient, like they're a being in the law. Anyway, that's just a super aside. I do think you have a way in to understanding being a parent. But the question, is it Mother's Day there? Because it's not Mother's Day here, but I know some are different.
Yeah, it's Mother's Day in the UK, but it's Mother's Day is different all over the world. I think in the US anyway, maybe Canada too, it's May time.
I think for me, Mother's Day became something different a long time ago because when you're a parent and you're a father, it's your job to make sure that something is done, some ceremony, some idea, some marking of time to help your child to appreciate um, things beyond themselves. Once a year with Mother's Day. Um, so this year I'm in the UK and it's Mother's Day here, and my wife, who I would normally be, checking up on my daughter, even though she's an adult. What are you doing something for Mother's Day for Mum? Um, they're in New Zealand together, and their Mother's Day is not until May. So it was a very strange feeling this year, but the important thing I think is that it might seem like a trivial thing or a silly thing to some people. Um, and I would say that even if you'd forgotten that today was Mother's Day, even if maybe you haven't contacted somebody in a while, this is a good day to have an excuse. So wherever you are in the world, you could say, I'm contacting you today because it's Mother's Day in the UK and I remembered you.
What I do see on Mother's Day and other days like this is memories come up, painful memories for many whose mothers are no longer here. And that includes my own mother, who is, thankfully here. She's talking about her own mother, and she's saying a wee kind of post on Facebook, the pictures, missing you every day, that kind of thing. It's like a mark of, not that she's been forgotten about, but it's like an excuse to put a milestone there and for others to share their thoughts on the post or whatever. I was down in my mum's house today, and it felt so grateful. Going down mum and dad's house, on Sunday afternoon, tea and coffee, sharing a gift and a card with my mother, and just sharing those kind of moments today that I really did appreciate. Because sometimes I feel I'm in automatic mode and life just goes past, and there's things that I feel that I miss sometimes, like contacting my mother, contacting my father, contacting my siblings, contacting friends. And a lot of that is due to the phone call is a difficult thing, has been talked about, many times on here. So the modes of communication, sometimes it's difficult and it kind of puts me off. But then I feel bad about it because, I should make more of an effort because that's my mother, that's somebody important, that sort of thing. But it's just I really did appreciate today because I know many people that, mothers are no longer with them and that, and how days like this, same things like birthdays and Christmases, etc., can be such a, not a burden, but just a painful day.
In the comments, Robbie says, it's always a difficult time for him now, knowing that his mom has passed away.
Going back to the post itself, I like how inclusive for mothers it's trying to be. The description of many mothers in many circumstances and a loving message of appreciation to those people, to those mothers. I like that. It's one of those things that people say, why do people say that? That shouldn't need to be said. Well, it does need to be said. It does need to be read. It does need to be shared. That sort of thing, because that's one thing that could perk someone up so much, just seeing that. And I like sharing stuff like that.
I agree with you. I have a couple of friends who I don't think it was listed here, but felt that the time had passed by, and I knew they grieved not having had a child, just never being in the situation where it would happen. And I think about them too. Also, since we're autistic, and I might have mentioned it to you before, I'm not an effusive, I was not an effusive mother. And my kids kind of, well, we're all, they're just used to me. But my daughter sometimes on Mother's Day would give me something funny. Once she gave me a book, I think it was fiction. It had a beautiful cover, and it was called The Bad Mom. And then she gave me flowers with it. But we both knew she was just like saying, "I know you don't want something, you know, overly sentimental." But here's how I know she loves me. To this day, and she's 37, she calls me mama.
Yeah, I like that. I was going over names to call my own mother. I know it's mum or sometimes ma, which I don't like that. Ma just sounds, to me, it sounds quite sharp and insulting. So I'm going, what's the best way to, this sort of name that's kind of loving and, and she'd like. And I call my own mother Mammy, my wee Mammy. And she loves it. She sometimes sends me texts and even cards she gives to me from your wee Mammy. So yeah, I do like that sort of thing. It's that way of that relationship, that attachment, that word, all those words that can mean so much and it sounds so nice.
You and Robbie have both made me cry. It's hard to do.
It's a strange thing with my mum. She was always called Mum by everybody. But after my dad passed away, there was nobody in her life that was calling her by her first name, Jean. You know, the people around her were calling her Mum or Mrs. Barton. So I started calling her Jean. And I think that was a helpful thing for her.
Well, that makes me think of right now, my daughter in law is going back to work in a week because her third child just turned one. And I've been really thinking about her because it's hard when you're attached to your child, like truly. And there comes a point where you need to individuate. And then when you talked about calling your mom Jean, it is like acknowledging her as a being.
The next post is from Autism Awareness. Health and Wellness website, Health Beauty Community Centre, raising autism awareness, celebrating neurodiversity and spreading understanding every day. And they've shared a pie chart about the auditory processing struggle. And the pie chart, the majority of it is about the more I'm unsure if this is humorous or not, but it's got different colours. The small blue one says, "Tell them I can't hear them." The small purple, "Move closer so I can hear." Yellow, which is a lot bigger than the previous two, repeatedly shout what? And the majority of the pie chart, which is green, saying laugh and hope it wasn't a question. What's your thoughts on this? It's about the auditory processing, like not hearing what people are saying. I can respond to that in a way, but I wonder what other people's thoughts are.
I think they missed the big part where I usually just yell, I can't hear you if you're not looking at me and in the same room.
I'm thinking, does everything need a response?
GR shared in the text, I'm in with the Greens. Which is the option of laugh and hope it wasn't a question.
I'm thinking then, because I possibly don't react very often, people might think I'm ignoring them. I was going to say ignorant, but ignoring them.
It's what it reminds me of is in conversation. It's like if I don't hear it properly, I might ask them to repeat it by saying what or pardon or sorry. But if I don't hear it or I can't figure it out what they're saying the third or fourth time, I don't want to keep asking. So I usually actually laugh or just nod and hope what they're saying isn't something that I need to respond to, in a great detail. And most of the time it isn't. A lot of it's just patter, it's just banter, and I get away with it most of the time. So I can relate to what the pie chart is kind of detailing and somewhat.
I think
Can I
I'm relatively willing to nod along if I'm not interested and I haven't heard what's going on. I'm willing to nod along in social situations, and that puts you in the green. Laugh and hope it wasn't a question. But that's really limited for me. Um, I'm in two situations. I can't hear very well sometimes, um, which means that I am constantly saying to people, I can't hear you. And I'm willing to move closer to them or say, I need to be looking at you at the same time or something else. Um, and not masking that is quite important for me. Being that blunt, that honest, is actually how I am adapting to my hearing loss. Um, and I think it's quite important I don't mask that. Um, being in that green zone for me would be a bad situation. But there's another thing, and it's not about auditory, it's about attention. I'm often in situations where people feel that they have my attention, and halfway through their sentence, I start to hear that somebody's speaking to me. Um, and not having the attention in the first place puts you in a dilemma. Do you mask? Do you bluff it out? Do you do the equivalent of green in that situation? Or do you say, I'm sorry, you didn't have my attention, I didn't give you my attention, whichever is the most appropriate, nice way of getting out of this, but the honest answer. And I'm afraid I've decided to go for the honest answer. I'm often in situations where people believe that they are talking to me and they're not because I have not taken notice of them, and I will tell them that.
I'm glad you brought up attention, Jules, because I'm kind of the opposite. I'll get in a situation where I'll go blank in the middle of what someone is saying to me. It's like, and that's this word processing that came here. I thought, is this post about a hearing problem, like deafness? Or is it about the attention, as you say, the inability to maintain one's attention as hearing in a conversation? And that's when, sometimes I'll just like go blank, and I fail to continue to understand what someone is saying after a while. Um, Possibly because I don't know what it is. Sometimes I just don't understand what they're saying, or it's too fast, or it's too intense, or it's too overwhelming.
I know what you mean, both of you. So they're two separate things. So I am actually technically hard of hearing, and it isn't just volume, it's like where is the sound coming from? And also, I missed the first part of words. Like, I know the word sounds like something, but I don't. If ask the person to repeat it a couple of times, I'm especially like if it starts with an ST or something like that. They are just going to have to use a new word maybe, but I have to be very specific. I am hard of hearing in this way, especially if I have to be like if the person might think it's their fault, I have to explain, no, it's not your accent. It's me. I'm hard of hearing, so maybe spell that word. Then on the other hand, my son he had this diagnosis, central auditory processing disorder. It's not that he wasn't intelligent or that there was anything at all wrong with his hearing, but um, if more than that cocktail party thing where like he couldn't pick out how like the teacher's voice as compared to all the other people talking. It required quite a lot of therapy to get working. Luckily for me, my daughter-in-law is a deaf interpreter, so we can all use sign language.
In the text, Robbie says, none of these. In noisy places, I just can't understand what is being said. I will say that. When too much is going on, it sounds like people are speaking another language that I don't understand. And yeah, that, yes, totally get what you're talking about there, Robbie. I've been in some of those situations, like meeting up with friends. There's even a time where I regularly meet with autistic friends, and we meet in coffee shop, and sometimes we meet in the pub, and all these places. It's on a Friday, so they're generally busy. And the coffee shop's actually worse than the pub because the coffee shop has those louder machines, and sometimes it's just hard to get a conversation. But then it seems that if you're in for me anyway, if I'm in a noisy place for a while, I seem to, it seems to balance out because I'm, I can't remember the word you call it, but it's like I get used to it and it's like it's not so bad. And if you're in company you're comfortable with, obviously that helps, especially if it's someone else that's autistic who may be struggling themselves or are struggling themselves. So you're accommodating each other.
For me, this is really variable because I can get an absolute buzz off being in a place where there are lots of people talking at the same time and they're talking over each other because my brain is engaged with them and they're grabbing hold. It actually makes it more comfortable for me because there's more going on and there's more concepts being thrown into the ring at the same time. It gets into a flow state between a few people, and it's a wonderful experience. However, like everyone else that's commented, in so many situations, the cacophony of people speaking over each other is something I have to almost turn off. I stop making any effort. In the first instance, I'm having a real buzz and I'm really pushing firing all of my neurons to enjoy this buzz thing. But in the second situation, I am retreating away from it and trying to block it out and push it away so that I can't. I actually push people, like people have said, another language. Ray said, yes, another language, as well as Robbie. And I actually make it sound like a babble in the background purposefully.
It's great that, Jules, if you're not having to pay attention to anyone or anything in particular, you can be in an environment and it's just a groove. It's a really just great, what's the word I'm looking for? A kind of an environment. It's because you're switched off to a certain extent within it and you can absorb it. But recently, as Harry says, I was in a coffee shop with an autistic friend and he was really wanting to relate stuff to me and I was really wanting to hear it. And I couldn't concentrate on him because a child was coughing behind me. See, there's things like little niggles and annoyances, and it'd be great to get over them, but they intrude when you're trying to focus attention. And it's maybe the issue is focusing attention, the levels of that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I'm in your camp because I've moved railway carriages just recently, just to move away from somebody clicking a pen.
Oh, wow. Oh, I could feel that.
Me too. I think the child coughing, it might be some innate thing we have in us that we won't be able to ignore because, kind of like an animal in nature, a child could be in danger. And so then maybe there's some innate thing that draws our attention to that. But then separately, even if that child wasn't coughing, Harry talked about the cafe where they're banging that espresso machine thing, and that is a lot. But I presume we all have a little bit of the thing my son had a lot of, the central auditory processing disorder. And it does make things sound like a different language, and you are not going to be able to deal with it. It's so hard. But also about the buzz that you were feeling, Jules, sometimes, but not other times. I sometimes wonder about that. I suppose they were all people and it was just happening, it was gelling. That doesn't always happen. But I also, for me, I just know when I can't go to a party or something, and I feel bad, and I do it all the time. And I think people know I'm going to do it. I just don't go because I can tell I won't be able to.
That's why I liked Autistic Radio so much, was that the bite-sized segments, the spaces, the pauses people would take, just the mode of delivery. It was easier. And that's a struggle sometimes in life.
What
Thanks,
we're doing,
Oh, sorry, Jules.
sorry, Harry. You might want to keep this in the edit. What we're doing here is actually breaking all the rules, Ray. We're leaving gaps. We're speaking very slowly and considered, one at a time. We're not being combative, and we're following one from one to another. It breaks all the rules that are happening out there at the moment. So it's only for the people who are in the niche that want to listen to this, and thankfully there are quite a few of you out there. Thank you.
Well, thanks, everyone. That was a great conversation, as always. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 15th of March, 2026, which is part of Spectrum Voyage's Conversation, which is every Sunday, 5:55 to 7 p.m. UK time. Look forward to doing it again, and good night.